The penthouse door swung open with a soft click that might as well have been a gunshot. Simone Carter's entire world stopped. She was lying in his bed, the bed of the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. The Korean businessman everyone whispered about like his name was a curse they didn't want to invite into their lives. The man who made millionaires nervous and politicians disappear. The man whose cold eyes could freeze hell itself. Kang Tae-jun. And Simone, a broke, exhausted single mother working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on for her 6-year-old daughter, had just passed out cold in his $1,000 silk sheets like she owned the place. 3 bodyguards in expensive black suits stepped through the doorway first, their hands moving toward hidden weapons the second they spotted her. Then he walked in. 6'3" of pure danger, a custom-tailored black suit that probably cost more than her car. Ink black hair swept back perfectly, a face so sharp it could cut glass, and tattoos, beautiful dark ink curling up his neck and disappearing under his collar, that made him look like exactly what he was, untouchable and terrifying. Tae-jun stopped dead when he saw her sprawled across his bed. The entire room held its breath. Simone shot up so fast her vision went white, her heart trying to break through her ribs. Her hands shook so badly she had to hide them behind her back. "I'm sorry," she gasped, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Kang. I didn't mean to fall asleep. Please don't fire me, please. I have a daughter. I need this job. I'll do anything." Tears were already streaming down her face because she knew what happened to people who disrespected men like him. They disappeared. Everyone in that room expected him to explode, to snap his fingers and have security drag her out, to destroy her life with a single word. That's what powerful men did. But Tae-jun didn't yell. He didn't call security. He just stared at her with those unreadable dark eyes, taking in her exhausted face, her wrinkled uniform, her trembling body that looked like it might collapse any second. Then, without saying a single word, he did something that made absolutely zero sense. He walked toward her, slowly, deliberately, each footstep echoing like a countdown to something Simone couldn't predict. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the worst, for anger, for shouting, for her whole life to fall apart. But instead of rage, she felt something warm and heavy settle over her shaking shoulders. Her eyes flew open in complete shock. Kang Tae-jun, the cold, feared MAFIA boss of Los Angeles, had just draped his designer suit jacket over her like she was someone who mattered, like she was someone worth protecting. The bodyguard's jaws literally dropped. And then he spoke, his voice low and rough but unexpectedly gentle. "When's the last time you slept?" That simple question broke something inside Simone, because nobody had cared enough to ask in years. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, that question, that jacket still warm from his body, was about to change absolutely everything. This dangerous man had just seen her, really seen her. And nothing would ever be the same again. Let's rewind 12 hours, because you need to understand how a single mother from South Central ended up in a mafia boss's bed in the first place. Simone Carter woke up that morning at 4:30, just like she did every single day. No alarm clock needed. Her body was so tired, so completely wrecked, that it had given up on real sleep altogether. She stumbled out of her twin bed, the one with the broken spring that dug into her back every night, and nearly tripped over a pile of unpaid bills stacked near the door. Electricity bill, water bill, rent notice stamped with angry red letters that screamed final warning. Simone shoved them aside with her foot and kept moving. She didn't have time to fall apart. Not today, not ever. In the tiny bathroom she shared with her daughter Zara, Simone splashed cold water on her face and stared at the stranger in the mirror. Dark circles under her brown eyes so deep they looked like bruises. Hair pulled back in a messy bun she hadn't had the energy to fix in 3 days. Skin that used to glow now looking dull and worn out. She was only 28 years old, but she felt about 60. "Mama," a small voice called from the bedroom. Simone's entire face changed. The exhaustion melted away, replaced by the soft, fierce love only a mother knows. "I'm right here, baby," Simone called back, her voice gentle. She walked into the bedroom and found Zara sitting up in bed, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny like it was the only safe thing in the world. The little girl's brown eyes were still heavy with sleep, her natural curls sticking up in every direction. "You leaving already?" Zara asked, her bottom lip trembling just a little. Simone's heart cracked straight down the middle. She sat on the edge of Zara's bed and pulled her daughter into her arms, breathing in the sweet smell of baby shampoo and innocence. "Just for a little while," Simone whispered, kissing Zara's forehead. "Mrs. Henderson's gonna watch you today, okay? And when Mama gets home tonight, we'll have mac and cheese, your favorite." Zara nodded, but she didn't let go of Simone's neck. "Promise you'll come back?" Zara asked quietly. That question hit Simone like a punch to the stomach. What kind of life was she giving her daughter that Zara had to ask if her own mother would come home? "I promise, baby," Simone said firmly, holding Zara tighter. "Mama always comes back, always." She had to, because Zara was the only reason Simone was still standing, the only reason she worked herself half to death every single day, the only reason she hadn't given up when Zara's father walked out the door 3 years ago and never looked back. Simone kissed Zara one more time, tucked her back into bed, and forced herself to walk out of that tiny apartment before her heart could shatter completely. By 6 in the morning, Simone was at her first job, cleaning offices in a massive downtown building that housed lawyers and accountants who made more money in a week than she'd see in a year. She scrubbed toilets, emptied trash cans, vacuumed floors while rich people stepped over her like she was invisible. By noon, she was at her second job, working the register at a corner store where customers yelled at her about prices she didn't control and accused her of stealing when the receipts didn't match their expectations. By 6 in the evening, she was putting on her third uniform of the day, a crisp black dress, white apron, and name tag that read SIMONE in neat block letters. This job was different. This job was at Apex Towers, the most exclusive luxury apartment building in all of Los Angeles. The kind of place where billionaires and celebrities and people with secrets lived behind bulletproof glass and armed security. Simone worked as a housekeeper for the penthouse suites. She cleaned for people who owned more shoes than she'd owned in her entire life. She scrubbed marble floors that cost more than her yearly rent. She washed sheets that were softer than clouds and probably imported from some country she'd never get to visit. And tonight she was assigned to the top floor, penthouse suite number 1. Kang Tae-jun's penthouse. The other housekeepers had warned her about him, told her to stay out of his way, keep her head down, don't ask questions, and definitely don't make eye contact. They said he was cold, ruthless, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with his fists and everything to do with his power. But Simone didn't care about any of that. She just needed to finish her shift, collect her paycheck, and get home to Zara. She stepped into the penthouse at exactly 7 o'clock, her arms full of fresh linens and cleaning supplies. The place was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city, making Los Angeles look like a glittering ocean of lights, furniture that belonged in a museum, art on the walls that probably cost more than most people's houses. And it was quiet, too quiet. Simone moved through the penthouse like a ghost, cleaning every surface until it sparkled. She worked fast, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind drifted to Zara, to the bills, to the crushing weight of trying to survive in a city that didn't care if she lived or died. She was in the master bedroom when it happened. Simone had just finished changing the sheets on the biggest bed she'd ever seen, a California king with a headboard that looked like it was carved from a single piece of black marble. The sheets were cool and smooth under her fingertips, the kind of fabric that probably felt like sleeping on a cloud. She stood there for just a second, staring at that bed. And then, without really thinking about it, she sat down, just for a moment, just to rest her feet, which were screaming after 14 hours of standing. But the second her body touched that mattress, something inside her just broke. The bed was so soft, so impossibly, unbelievably soft, like it was made of dreams and wishes and everything she'd ever wanted but could never have. Simone told herself she'd only close her eyes for 1 minute, just one. But 1 minute turned into two, and two turned into five. And before she knew it, Simone Carter, single mother, three-job warrior, survivor of 1,000 impossible days, was fast asleep in Kang Tae-jin's bed. She didn't hear the penthouse door open. She didn't hear the bodyguard step inside, their movements silent and practiced. She didn't hear Tae-jin walk through his own home, his day finally done, his mind already on the whiskey waiting for him in his office. She didn't hear any of it. Not until that door clicked shut, and her entire world came crashing down. Now we're back to where we started. Simone standing in the middle of that bedroom, shaking like a leaf, tears streaming down her face, begging for mercy from a man who didn't give mercy to anyone. Tae-jin's jacket was still draped over her shoulders, warm and heavy and smelling like expensive cologne and something else, something darker like smoke and secrets. "When's the last time you slept?" Tae-jin asked again, his voice still calm, still gentle, still completely wrong for a man like him. Simone opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She didn't know how to answer that. Sleep, real sleep, she couldn't even remember. I do," Simone stammered, wiping at her face with shaking hands. "I work 3 jobs, Mr. Kang. I don't really sleep much." Tae-jin's jaw tightened. Something flickered in his dark eyes, something that looked almost like anger but not at her, at something else. He turned to his bodyguards, who were still frozen by the door like statues. "Out," Tae-jin said quietly. The men didn't hesitate. They disappeared through the door without a word, closing it behind them with a soft click. And suddenly, Simone was alone with him. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run, to get out, to apologize again and hope he'd let her leave with her life intact. But Tae-jin didn't move toward her. He moved toward the door and locked it. Simone's breath caught in her throat. Oh God, this was it. This was where everything went wrong. But then Tae-jin turned back to her and his expression was tired. Not angry, not cold, just tired. "Sit down," Tae-jin said, nodding toward the bed. "Mr. Kang, Simone started. "Sit," Tae-jin repeated, firmer this time, "before you fall over." Simone's legs were shaking so badly that sitting down sounded like the only option that wouldn't end with her collapsing on the floor. She lowered herself onto the edge of the bed, her hands gripping the fabric of his jacket like it was a lifeline. Tae-jin walked to the other side of the room and poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Whiskey, dark and smooth. He downed it in one swallow, then poured another. For a long moment he just stood there, his back to her, staring out the window at the city below. "You have a daughter," Tae-jin said finally. It wasn't a question. Simone's breath hitched. "Yes." "How old?" "6." Tae-jin was quiet for another beat. Then he turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Where's her father?" Tae-jin asked. Simone's throat tightened. She hated that question, hated the shame it brought up, the humiliation, the reminder that she'd trusted someone who didn't deserve it. "Gone," Simone said quietly. "He left when she was 3, haven't seen him since." Tae-jin's eyes darkened, but he didn't say anything. He just looked at her like he was putting together pieces of a puzzle she didn't even know existed. "You fell asleep in my bed," Tae-jin said slowly, "because you're exhausted, because you work yourself to death just to survive, because nobody's taking care of you." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a truth Simone had been running from for years. She looked down at her hands, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kang," Simone whispered. "I didn't mean to disrespect you. I just needed to rest, just for a second." Tejan set his glass down and walked toward her again. Simone tensed, every muscle in her body preparing for the worst. But he didn't yell, he didn't threaten. He crouched down in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. His face was inches from hers, close enough that she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the way his expression had softened into something almost human. "Listen to me," Tejan said quietly, his voice steady and sure. "You didn't disrespect me. You're a mother doing everything you can to survive in a world that doesn't give you a fair shot. That's not disrespect. That's strength." Simone's breath caught. She stared at him, completely frozen because this man, this dangerous, feared, untouchable man, was saying things nobody had ever said to her before. "You're not fired," Tejan continued. "You're not in trouble, and you're not leaving this penthouse tonight." Simone's heart stopped. "What?" Tejan stood up, his expression firm. "You're going to sleep, real sleep, in a real bed, and tomorrow morning you and I are going to talk." "Mr. Kang, I can't," Simone started, panic rising in her chest. "You can," Tejan said, cutting her off. "And you will, because if you walk out of here tonight and collapse on your way home, your daughter loses her mother, and I'm not letting that happen." Simone felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. She didn't understand what was happening, didn't understand why this man, this powerful, dangerous man, was being kind to her. "Why are you doing this?" Simone asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tejan looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "Because I know what it's like to have no one," Tejan said quietly. "And I'm not going to let you disappear into the cracks like you don't matter, because you do." And just like that, Simone Carter's entire world shifted. If you're hooked and need to know what happens next, smash that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to get even crazier. Trust me, you do not want to miss what Tejan does next. Tejan left Simone alone in his bedroom with strict instructions to sleep, eat the food he'd have delivered, and not even think about leaving until morning. Simone sat on that bed for a full 10 minutes after he walked out, staring at the door like she just stepped into an alternate reality. This didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Men like Kang Tejan didn't care about people like her. They didn't notice. They didn't help. They definitely didn't offer their beds to exhausted housekeepers who fell asleep on the job. But he had. And now Simone was sitting in the most beautiful room she'd ever seen, wearing a mafia boss's jacket and trying not to have a complete breakdown. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," Simone called hesitantly. The door opened, and a young woman stepped inside carrying a silver tray loaded with food. Real food. Not instant ramen or canned soup or the dollar menu burgers Simone survived on. This was restaurant-quality food, roasted chicken, vegetables that actually looked fresh, rice that smelled like heaven, and a slice of chocolate cake that made Simone's mouth water just looking at it. "Mr. Kang asked me to bring this up for you," the woman said with a polite smile. She set the tray on the bedside table. "There's also a bathroom through that door if you'd like to shower. Fresh towels and clothes are already laid out." Simone blinked. "Clothes?" "Yes, ma'am," the woman said. "Mr. Kang thought you might be more comfortable." Then she left, closing the door softly behind her. Simone stared at the food like it might disappear if she blinked. Her stomach growled so loudly it echoed through the room, reminding her that she'd skipped both breakfast and lunch to save money. She picked up the fork with shaking hands and took a bite of the chicken. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Simone ate slowly, savoring every single bite, tears streaming down her face because she couldn't remember the last time someone had fed her. The last time someone had cared whether she was hungry or tired or barely holding on. When she finished eating, she walked into the bathroom and nearly collapsed all over again. It was bigger than her entire apartment, marble everywhere, a bathtub that could fit 3 people, a shower with more buttons and settings than a spaceship. And there, folded neatly on the counter, was a set of clothes, soft cotton pants and an oversized t-shirt that looked brand new. Simone showered, washing away 14 hours of sweat and exhaustion and fear. She stood under the hot water until her skin turned pink, letting herself cry because no one could hear her in here. When she finally stepped out and put on the clean clothes, she felt almost human again. She walked back into the bedroom, her body so heavy with exhaustion she could barely stand. She climbed into that massive bed, pulled the covers up to her chin, and closed her eyes. And for the first time in 3 years, Simone Carter slept through the night. Tejan stood in his office on the other side of the penthouse, staring at the security footage from his bedroom. He wasn't watching Simone sleep. That would have been creepy and invasive. He was watching the timestamp from earlier that evening, watching her stumble into his room with cleaning supplies, watching her change his sheets with practiced efficiency, watching her sit down on his bed for just a second, and then watching her body give out completely. She curled up on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek like a child. She'd been asleep in seconds, deep, exhausted sleep that came from a body that had nothing left to give. Tejan's jaw tightened. He built an empire on knowing people, on reading them, on understanding what they wanted, what they feared, what made them tick. But Simone Carter wasn't like anyone he'd ever met. She wasn't trying to get close to him, wasn't angling for money or power or protection. She'd fallen asleep in his bed because she was so completely wrecked that her body had simply shut down. And when she'd woken up and seen him standing there, her first thought wasn't to seduce him or manipulate him or play some game. Her first thought was her daughter. "Please don't fire me. I have a daughter. I need this job." Tejan had been in the business of fear for a long time. He knew what people looked like when they were scared of him. He'd seen it 1,000 times. But Simone's fear was different. She wasn't scared of what he'd do to her. She was scared of losing the ability to take care of her child. That kind of fear, that kind of love, was something Tejan understood on a level most people couldn't. He poured himself another drink and walked to the window, looking out at the city that had made him rich and powerful and completely alone. Tejan had grown up with nothing, born in Seoul to a mother who worked herself to death and a father who disappeared before Tejan could even remember his face. He'd been 7 years old when his mother collapsed at work from exhaustion and never woke up. 7 years old, and suddenly he was nobody's son, nobody's responsibility, nobody's problem. He'd bounced through the system, foster homes, group homes, streets, until he was old enough to fight for himself. And fight he did. By the time Tejan was 18, he'd made a name for himself in the underground. By 25, he controlled half of Los Angeles. By 30, he was untouchable. But power came with a price, and Tejan's price was loneliness. He was 34 years old, and he couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him like he was a person instead of a weapon. Until tonight. Until Simone Carter looked at him with exhaustion and fear and gratitude all mixed together, and asked him why he was being kind to her. Tejan finished his drink and set the glass down with a quiet clink. He didn't know what he was doing, didn't know why he'd given her his jacket or his bed or his protection. All he knew was that when he'd walked into that bedroom and seen her lying there, so small, so fragile, so completely worn down by life, something inside him had cracked wide open. And he wasn't going to let her go back to that life, not if he could help it. The next morning, Simone woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and a moment of pure panic. Where was she? Then it all came rushing back. The penthouse, the bed, Kang Tijin. Simone sat up so fast her head spun. She looked around the massive bedroom, half expecting to find security guards ready to drag her out. But the room was empty. She climbed out of bed, her body still heavy with sleep, but feeling better than it had in years. She walked to the window and stared out at Lo's angels spread out below her like a living, breathing thing. From up here the city looked beautiful, clean, full of possibility. From down there where Simone lived, it looked a lot different. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," Simone called nervously. The door opened, and Tijin stepped inside. He was wearing a black t-shirt and dark jeans this time, his hair slightly messy like he'd just woken up too. The tattoos on his neck and arms were fully visible now, dark ink that made him look dangerous and magnetic at the same time. But his expression was calm, almost gentle. "Good morning," Tijin said. "Good morning," Simone replied, her voice small. Tijin walked further into the room, his hands in his pockets. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Simone admitted, then quickly added, "Thank you for everything, for letting me stay, for the food, for not, destroying your life," Tijin offered with the faintest hint of a smile. Simone let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah, that." Tijin gestured toward the door. "Come with me, we need to talk." Simone followed him through the penthouse to a dining room that looked like something out of a magazine. A long glass table, chairs that probably cost more than her rent, and a full breakfast spread laid out like they were expecting royalty. "Sit," Tijin said, pulling out a chair for her. Simone sat, feeling completely out of place in this world of wealth and power. Tijin sat across from her and poured coffee into 2 mugs. He slid one across the table to her. "I did some research last night," Tijin said casually, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb. "You work 3 jobs, you're behind on rent, your car's 1 breakdown away from the junkyard, and you're raising a 6-year-old daughter on your own." Simone's stomach dropped. "How do you?" "I have resources," Tijin said simply. "And before you freak out, I'm not trying to invade your privacy. I needed to understand your situation." Simone's hands tightened around the coffee mug. "Why?" Tijin leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes locked on hers. "Because I'm going to help you." Simone blinked. "What?" "I'm going to help you," Tijin repeated slowly. "Your rent, your bills, your car, it's all handled. As of this morning, you're debt-free." The room started spinning. Simone gripped the edge of the table, trying to ground herself because this couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. "Mr. Kang, I can't," Simone started, her voice breaking. "You can," Tijin said firmly. "And you will, because you're going to quit 2 of your jobs and work for me full-time." Simone's breath caught. "Work for you doing what?" Tijin's expression was unreadable. "I need someone I can trust, someone who's loyal, honest, and won't try to take advantage of me. You're that person." "You don't even know me," Simone whispered. "I know enough," Tijin said. "You fell asleep in my bed because your body gave out from exhaustion, not because you were trying to seduce me or scheme your way into my life. That tells me everything I need to know." Simone felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Tijin was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward, his expression serious. "Because I grew up with nothing," Tijin said quietly. "And I watched my mother work herself to death trying to keep me fed. And when she died, nobody cared. Nobody helped. Nobody even noticed she was gone." His voice was steady, but Simone could hear the pain underneath it. The old wounds that never quite healed. "I'm not going to let that happen to you," Tijin continued. "Or your daughter. So you're going to take this job, you're going to let me help you, and you're going to give that little girl the life she deserves." Simone couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down her cheeks in hot, messy streams. "I don't know what to say," Simone whispered. "Say yes," Tijin said simply. Simone looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she never expected to find in a man like Kang Tae-jin. She saw someone who understood. "Yes," Simone said, her voice shaking. "Yes, thank you." Tae-jin nodded once, his expression softening. "Good, now eat your breakfast, you're going to need your strength." And just like that, Simone Carter's life changed forever. 3 weeks had passed since Simone Carter started working for Kang Tae-jin, and she still felt like she was living in someone else's life. Every morning, a car picked her up from her apartment. A new apartment Tae-jin had insisted she move into, one with actual heat and windows that closed all the way. Every morning, she dropped Zara off at a new school, one with teachers who smiled and playgrounds that didn't have broken glass everywhere. And every morning, she showed up to Apex Towers feeling like Cinderella waiting for midnight to strike and the magic to wear off. But the magic didn't wear off. Tae-jin had kept his word, all of it. Simone's rent was paid 6 months in advance. Her car had been replaced with a reliable used sedan that actually started when she turned the key. Her medical bills, her credit card debt, even the money she owed her old landlord, all of it gone. And her job, it wasn't cleaning anymore. Tae-jin had hired her as his personal assistant. At first, Simone thought it was a joke. She didn't have a college degree, didn't have experience managing schedules or organizing meetings or doing any of the things assistants were supposed to do. But Tae-jin didn't care about any of that. "I don't need someone with a degree," Tae-jin had said on her first official day. "I need someone I can trust, someone who won't sell me out for a better offer. You're that person." So Simone learned fast. She learned how to manage Tae-jin's schedule, which was packed from sunrise to well past midnight most days. She learned the names of his business associates, the ones he trusted and the ones he didn't. She learned how to read his moods, when he needed space, when he needed coffee, when he needed someone to tell him the truth even if it wasn't what he wanted to hear. And slowly, carefully, Simone started to see the man behind the reputation. Kang Tae-jin wasn't just a feared mafia boss. He was a businessman who'd built an empire from nothing. He owned real estate, restaurants, nightclubs, import companies. Most of his businesses were legitimate. Some weren't. But even the dark parts of his world operated with a code. No drugs, no human trafficking, no hurting innocent people. "I'm not a saint," Tae-jin had told her once, late at night when they were finishing up paperwork in his office. "But I have lines I don't cross." Simone believed him, because in the weeks she'd worked for him, she'd never seen him hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. She'd seen him shut down a business partner who tried to exploit workers. She'd seen him personally deliver money to a family whose father had been injured working on one of his construction sites. She'd seen him stay up until 3 in the morning making sure every single employee got their Christmas bonuses on time. Kang Tae-jin was complicated, dangerous, yes, but also decent in ways most powerful men weren't. And that terrified Simone, because she was starting to care about him. Not in a romantic way, at least, that's what she kept telling herself, but in the way you care about someone who's seen you at your lowest and didn't turn away. Someone who's given you a second chance when the world kept slamming doors in your face. She cared about him, and caring about someone like Tae-jin, that was dangerous. It was a Friday afternoon when everything started to shift. Simone was in Tae-jin's office, sorting through contracts that needed his signature, when his phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw a name she'd never seen before. Yoon Min-seo. Tae-jin's expression darkened the second he saw the name. He picked up the phone, his jaw tight. "What do you want?" Tae-jin said coldly. Simone couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she could see Tae-jin's body language change. His shoulders tensed. His free hand curled into a fist on the desk. "I told you to stay in Seoul," Tae-jin said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You have no business being here." A pause. "I don't care what you think you're owed," Tae-jin continued. "You made your choice 5 years ago. Live with it." Another pause, longer this time. Then Tae-jin's eyes flicked to Simone, and something in his expression shifted, something almost protective. "Don't even think about it," Tejan said into the phone, his voice dropping to a growl. "You come near her and I'll bury you." Simon's heart started pounding. Her, who was he talking about? Tejan ended the call without another word and set his phone down hard enough to make the desk rattle. "Is everything okay?" Simon asked carefully. Tejan didn't answer right away. He just stared at his phone like it was a live grenade. "My brother in town," Tejan finally said, his voice flat. Simon blinked. "You have a brother." "Half-brother," Tejan corrected. "Same father, different mothers, and before you ask, no, we're not close." Simon wanted to ask more questions, but the look on Tejan's face told her now wasn't the time. "Do you need me to do anything?" Simon asked instead. Tejan looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Yeah, stay away from him. If you see him, if he approaches you, if he even looks at you, you call me immediately. Understand?" Simon nodded quickly. Understood. But she didn't understand. Not really. She didn't understand why Tejan's brother would be a threat. Didn't understand why Tejan looked like he was preparing for war. She didn't understand any of it. Not yet. Subscribe and hit that notification bell because Tejan's brother is about to make his entrance, and trust me, this man is chaos. You're gonna want to see this. Simon met Yoon Min-seo 2 days later. She was leaving Apex Towers after a long day, her arms full of files Tejan wanted her to review at home, when a man stepped directly into her path. He was tall, not quite as tall as Tejan, but close, handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, black hair styled perfectly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You must be Simon," the man said, his voice smooth and confident. Simon froze. "Who are you?" "Yoon Min-seo," he said, extending his hand. "Tejan's brother." Every alarm bell in Simon's head started ringing at once. She didn't take his hand. "I'm sorry, but I need to go," Simon said, stepping around him. Min-seo moved with her, blocking her path again. His smile widened, but it was all wrong, like a wolf pretending to be friendly. "Don't be rude," Min-seo said lightly. "I just want to talk. My brother told me so much about you." Simon doubted that very much. Tejan barely talked about himself, let alone about her. "I really need to go," Simon repeated, her voice firmer this time. "My daughter waiting for me." Min-seo's eyes lit up with interest. "A daughter? How sweet. What's her name?" Simon's blood ran cold. She wasn't about to give this man any information about Zara. "Excuse me," Simon said, pushing past him with more force this time. Min-seo let her go, but she could feel his eyes on her back as she walked to her car. Could feel him watching her like a predator sizing up prey. The second Simon got in her car, she locked the doors and called Tejan. He picked up on the first ring. "What's wrong?" Tejan asked immediately. "Your brother," Simon said, her voice shaking. "He just approached me outside the building. He knew my name. He asked about Zara." Tejan's voice turned to ice. "Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm in my car. I'm leaving now." "Good," Tejan said. "Go straight home. Lock your doors. I'm sending security to watch your building tonight." "Tejan, what's going on?" Simon asked. "Why is your brother—" "I'll explain everything tomorrow," Tejan cut her off. "Right now I need you safe. Promise me you'll go straight home." "I promise," Simon said. "Good," Tejan said again. Then softer, "I'm sorry. I should have warned you better. I didn't think he'd approach you so soon." Simon wanted to ask what that meant. Wanted to know what kind of history Tejan had with his brother that made him this protective. But she could hear the tension in Tejan's voice, the barely controlled anger, and she knew better than to push. "I'll see you tomorrow," Simon said quietly. "See you tomorrow," Tejan replied. "And Simon, thank you for calling me." The line went dead. Simon sat in her car for a long moment, her hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm her racing heart. She didn't know who Yoon Min-seo was or what he wanted. But she knew one thing for sure. Whatever storm was coming, it was going to be bad. That night, Tejan sat in his office with a glass of whiskey and a loaded gun on his desk. He stared at his phone, at the last message his brother had sent him. "She's pretty. I can see why you're so protective." Tejan's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Mincio wasn't just in Lowe's Angels to cause trouble. He was here to take something from Tejan. That's what Mincio did. He showed up, he destroyed things, and he walked away laughing. They'd been raised by the same father, a man who'd abandoned both of them in different ways. Tejan's mother had died. Mincio's mother had remarried and moved to Seoul, taking Mincio with her. But Mincio had come back 5 years ago, looking for money and power, and a piece of the empire Tejan had built from nothing. Tejan had told him no, told him to stay in Korea, told him that this world, Tejan's world, wasn't for him. Mincio hadn't taken that well. And now he was back, and he'd set his sights on Simone. Tejan downed his whiskey in one swallow and reached for his phone. He wasn't going to let Mincio hurt her. He wasn't going to let anyone hurt her, even if it meant going to war with his own blood. The next morning, Simone showed up to work and found Tejan waiting for her in his office. But he wasn't alone. There were 3 other men in the room, bodyguards, judging by the way they stood and the way their eyes tracked every movement she made. "Sit down," Tejan said, his voice calm but serious. Simone sat, her heart pounding. "These are your new security guards," Tejan said, gesturing to the men. "One of them will be with you at all times. When you leave work, when you pick up Zara from school, when you're at home. They'll stay outside, out of sight, but they'll be there." Simone's eyes widened. "Tejan, that's not necessary." "It is," Tejan cut her off, his tone leaving no room for argument. "My brother is dangerous, and he's interested in you, which means you're in danger." "Why me?" Simone asked. "I'm nobody, I'm just your assistant." Tejan's expression softened slightly. "You're not nobody, not to me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning Simone wasn't sure she was ready to unpack. "Mincio knows that," Tejan continued, "which means he's going to try to use you to get to me. I'm not letting that happen." Simone swallowed hard. "What does he want?" Tejan was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "He wants what I have," Tejan said simply. "Power, money, control. He's always been jealous that I built this empire and he didn't, so now he's back to try to take it from me." "And he thinks going through me will do that?" Simone asked. "Yes," Tejan said bluntly, "because he knows that if something happens to you, it'll destroy me." Simone's breath caught. She stared at Tejan, trying to process what he'd just said. "Tejan," Simone started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I care about you, Simone," Tejan said, his voice steady. "More than I probably should, and Mincio knows it, so he's going to come after you, and I need you to let me protect you." Simone felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond to a man like Tejan admitting he cared about her. "Okay," Simone finally said. "Okay, I'll let you protect me." Tejan nodded, relief flickering across his face. "Good." One of the bodyguards stepped forward. He was tall, muscular, with kind eyes that softened when he looked at Simone. "Ma'am, my name's Darius," he said. "I'll be your primary guard. If you need anything, if you see anything suspicious, you call me or Mr. Kang immediately. Got it?" Simone nodded. "Got it." Darius gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, we're good at our jobs. Nothing's going to happen to you." Simone wanted to believe him. She really did. But as she sat there in Tejan's office, surrounded by armed men and the weight of secrets she didn't fully understand, Simone couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming. And there was nothing any of them could do to stop it. For the next 2 weeks, Simone's life became a strange new normal. Darius followed her everywhere, always a few steps behind, always watching. At first, it was weird, uncomfortable. But Darius was respectful and professional, and after a few days, Simone barely noticed he was there. She picked Zara up from school with Darius waiting by the car. She went grocery shopping with Darius standing near the entrance. She tucked Zara into bed at night knowing that Darius was parked outside her building, keeping watch. And through it all, Simone saw less and less of Tijan. He was busy, busier than usual, dealing with whatever mess his brother was causing. Their interactions became shorter, more tense. Quick meetings in his office. Brief phone calls where he'd ask if she was safe and then hang up before she could ask how he was doing. Simone missed him. She hated that she missed him. Hated that she'd gotten used to his presence, his quiet kindness, the way he looked at her like she mattered. But she did miss him. And she worried about him. Everything came to a head on a Tuesday night. Simone was home with Zara, making dinner, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should ask Tijan what really happened to his mother. Bet he didn't tell you the whole truth. M." Simone's blood ran cold. Mincio. She immediately called Tijan, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Then she called Darius. "Simone, what's wrong?" Darius answered immediately. "I just got a text from Mincio," Simone said, her voice shaking. "I tried calling Tijan, but he's not answering." Darius cursed under his breath. "Okay, listen to me. Lock your doors, don't answer the door for anyone except me, and I'm coming up right now." "Okay," Simone said. She hung up and immediately checked every lock in the apartment. Then she went to Zara's room, where her daughter was coloring at her desk. "Hey, baby," Simone said, trying to keep her voice calm. "How about we have a movie night in Mama's room tonight?" Zara's face lit up. "Really?" "Really," Simone said. "Go grab your blanket and Mr. Bunny." Zara didn't need to be told twice. She scooped up her stuffed bunny and ran to Simone's room. Simone followed her, her phone clutched in her hand, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. A knock on the door made her jump. "Simone, it's Darius," a voice called from the other side. Simone checked the peephole just to be sure, then unlocked the door and let him in. Darius stepped inside, his expression serious. "I talked to Mr. Kang. He's on his way. He said to keep you here until he arrives." "What's going on?" Simone asked. "Why isn't he answering his phone?" Darius hesitated. "There was an incident at one of his properties. Mincio's people tried to burn it down." Simone's stomach dropped. "Is Tijan okay?" "He's fine," Darius assured her. "But he's pissed. And when he gets here, you two need to talk, because things are about to get a lot worse before they get better." Simone nodded numbly. She didn't know what else to do. So she sat on her couch with Zara curled up next to her, watching a Disney movie she couldn't focus on, and waited for Tijan to show up. He arrived an hour later, looking like he'd been through a war. His suit was rumpled, his hair was messy. There was a cut on his cheek, small but fresh, like someone had thrown something at him. But his eyes were blazing with barely controlled fury. "Zara, baby, why don't you go finish your movie in your room?" Simone said gently. Zara looked between Simone and Tijan, her little face confused. "Is everything okay, Mama?" "Everything's fine," Simone lied. "I just need to talk to Mr. Kang for a minute." Zara nodded and padded off to her room, clutching Mr. Bunny like a lifeline. The second Zara's door closed, Tijan crossed the room and pulled Simone into his arms. She froze for half a second, shocked by the sudden contact. But then she melted into him, her hands gripping the back of his jacket, her face pressed against his chest. "Are you okay?" Tijan asked quietly, his voice rough. "I'm fine," Simone whispered. "Are you?" Tijan didn't answer. He just held her tighter, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. "I'm sorry," Tijan finally said. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this. I'm sorry my brother's a psychopath. I'm sorry." Stop, Simone cut him off, pulling back just enough to look at his face. You didn't drag me into anything. You saved me. You gave me a life I never thought I'd have, so don't apologize for that. Tejan stared at her, his dark eyes searching hers. I care about you, Tejan said again, his voice barely above a whisper. Too much, and that's dangerous. I know, Simone said, but I care about you too, and I'm not going anywhere. Something shifted in Tejan's expression. Something soft and vulnerable, and completely unlike the cold, feared man everyone else saw. He reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing gently across her cheeks. You're making this really hard for me, Tejan said quietly. Making what hard? Simone asked, her heart pounding. Staying away from you, Tejan admitted. And then, before Simone could respond, Tejan leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't rough or demanding. It was soft and careful and full of all the things neither of them knew how to say out loud. Simone's breath hitched, and then she kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair, her entire world narrowing down to just this moment. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard, their foreheads pressed together. This is a bad idea, Simone whispered. Probably, Tejan agreed, but I don't care anymore. Simone laughed, soft and shaky. Me either. And in that moment, despite the danger and the chaos, and the fact that Tejan's psychopath brother was trying to destroy their lives, Simone felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt hope. Hit that like button if your heart is racing right now, because things are about to get intense. The next morning, Simone woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop on the nightstand. She blinked awake, her mind still foggy from sleep, and reached for the phone. 12 missed calls, 23 text messages. All from Tejan. Simone's heart jumped into her throat. She sat up fast, her hands shaking as she unlocked her phone. The first message made her blood run cold. Mincio knows where you live. Get Zara, Darius is outside, come to the penthouse now. The messages after that were more urgent, more desperate. Simone, answer your phone. Please tell me you're okay. I'm sending backup. Do not leave your apartment until they arrive. Simone jumped out of bed and ran to Zara's room. Her daughter was still asleep, curled up in a ball with Mr. Bunny tucked under her chin. Zara, baby, wake up, Simone said, gently shaking her daughter's shoulder. Zara's eyes fluttered open. Mama. We need to go, sweetie, Simone said, trying to keep her voice calm even though panic was clawing at her chest. Can you get dressed really fast for me? Zara rubbed her eyes and nodded, sensing the urgency in her mother's voice. While Zara got dressed, Simone threw on jeans and a sweatshirt, grabbed her purse and called Tejan. He answered on the first ring. Thank God, Tejan breathed. Are you safe? We're okay, Simone said. We're getting ready to leave now. Good, Tejan said. Darius is right outside your door. 2 more guards are in the lobby. Don't stop, don't talk to anyone, just get in the car and come straight here. Tejan, what happened? Simone asked, fear making her voice shake. I'll explain when you get here, Tejan said. Right now I just need you safe. Please, Simone, trust me. I do, Simone said. We're leaving now. She hung up, grabbed Zara's hand, and opened the door. Darius was standing right there, his expression grim but steady. Let's move, Darius said. Simone didn't ask questions. She just held Zara's hand tight and followed Darius down the stairs, through the lobby, and out to a black SUV waiting at the curb. 2 more guards flanked them, their eyes scanning every shadow, every car, every person on the street. Simone climbed into the back seat with Zara, and Darius got in the front. The car peeled away from the curb before the doors were even fully closed. Mama, what's happening? Zara asked quietly, her eyes wide and scared. Simone pulled her daughter close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Everything's okay, baby. We're just going to visit Mr. Kang for a little while. Is he in trouble? Zara asked. Simone's heart clenched. No, sweetheart, he's not in trouble. He's just making sure we're safe. Zara seemed to accept that answer. She cuddled closer to Simone, clutching Mr. Bunny, and stayed quiet for the rest of the drive. Simone stared out the window, watching the city blur past, and tried not to think about what Mincio might be planning. When they arrived at Apex Towers, Tijan was waiting in the lobby. The second he saw Simone and Zara step out of the car, his entire body relaxed. He crossed the space between them in 3 long strides and pulled Simone into a tight hug. "You're okay," Tijan said, his voice rough with relief. "We're okay," Simone confirmed, her face pressed against his chest. When Tijan pulled back, he crouched down so he was at eye level with Zara. "Hey there," Tijan said gently. Zara looked at him with big, curious eyes. "Hi, Mr. Kang." "You can call me Tijan if you want," he said, giving her a small smile. "I know things have been a little scary this morning, but I promise you and your mom are safe here, okay?" Zara nodded slowly. "Okay." Tijan stood up and looked at Simone. "Come upstairs, we need to talk." Simone followed him to the elevator with Zara's hand in hers, her heart pounding with every step. Upstairs in the penthouse, Tijan had turned his living room into a war room. There were maps spread across the coffee table, laptops open on every surface, and at least 6 men Simone didn't recognize standing around looking tense and dangerous. "Zara, sweetheart, why don't you watch TV in the guest room?" Simone said, trying to keep her voice light. "Mr. Kang has cartoons." One of the guards, a woman this time with kind eyes and a gentle smile, stepped forward. "I'll stay with her, ma'am." Simone nodded gratefully and watched Zara follow the woman down the hall. The second Zara was out of sight, Simone turned to Tijan. "Tell me everything," Simone said. Tijan ran a hand through his hair and gestured for her to sit down. "Mincio made his move last night. He tried to burn down one of my warehouses. When that didn't work, he started digging into everyone connected to me, and that includes you." Simone's stomach dropped. "How much does he know?" "Everything," Tijan said grimly. "Where you live, where Zara goes to school, where you used to work. He's been watching you for weeks." Simone felt sick. "Why?" "Because he knows that hurting you would hurt me," Tijan said bluntly. "And he wants to hurt me. That's what this has always been about. He's angry that I didn't let him into my world, so now he's going to try to destroy it." "What are we going to do?" Simone asked. Tijan's expression hardened. "We're going to end this, today." Simone blinked. "What does that mean?" Tijan leaned forward, his dark eyes locked on hers. "It means I'm going to have a conversation with my brother, and he's going to understand that you and Zara are off limits, permanently." "Tijan, that sounds dangerous," Simone said carefully. "It is," Tijan admitted, "but I'm not letting him terrorize you. I'm not letting him put Zara in danger. This ends now." Simone wanted to argue, wanted to tell him not to put himself at risk, but she could see the determination in his face, the set of his jaw, and she knew there was no talking him out of this. "Just promise me you'll be careful," Simone said quietly. Tijan reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I promise." Tijan left the penthouse an hour later with half a dozen guards, and a plan that Simone wasn't entirely sure she understood. All she knew was that he was meeting Mincio at a neutral location, an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, and that whatever happened there would determine whether their lives went back to normal or spiraled completely out of control. Simone paced the penthouse like a caged animal, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for news. Zara was still watching cartoons in the guest room, blissfully unaware of the danger swirling around them. Darius stood by the door, his expression unreadable. "He's going to be okay," Darius said quietly. "You don't know that," Simone said, her voice tight. "I do," Darius said. "I've worked for Mr. Kang for 5 years. I've seen him handle worse than this. He's smart, he's prepared, and he's not going to let anything happen to you or your daughter. He'll come back. Simone wanted to believe him. She really did. But the fear sitting heavy in her chest wouldn't go away. At the warehouse, Tijan stood face to face with his brother for the first time in 5 years. Mincio looked exactly the same, sharp, handsome, dangerous. But there was something rotten underneath now, something twisted and cruel that hadn't been there before. "Well, well," Mincio said, his voice dripping with false cheerfulness. "The king finally shows his face." "This ends today," Tijan said flatly. "Whatever game you think you're playing, it's over." Mincio laughed. "Game? This isn't a game, brother, this is justice. You had everything handed to you, the empire, the power, the respect. And what did I get? Nothing." "You got everything you deserved," Tijan shot back. "You had opportunities. You had money. You could have built something for yourself. But instead, you pissed it all away on bad decisions and worse company." Mincio's smile faltered. "You think you're better than me?" "I know I am," Tijan said coldly. "Because I don't hurt innocent people to make myself feel powerful, and that's exactly what you're doing with Simone and her daughter." Mincio's eyes gleamed with malice. "Ah yes, the single mother, the poor, exhausted little housemaid who fell asleep in your bed. Tell me, brother, does she know what you really are? Does she know the things you've done?" "She knows enough," Tijan said. "And she's still here. That's more than anyone's ever done for you." Mincio's expression darkened. "You don't get to keep her. You don't get to have everything while I have nothing." "This isn't about her," Tijan said. "This is about you and me, so let's settle it, right here, right now. You leave them alone and I'll give you what you want." Mincio raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think I want anything from you?" "Money," Tijan said simply. "You always want money, so I'll give you $5 million, cash, untraceable. You take it, you go back to Seoul, and you never contact me or anyone connected to me ever again." Mincio was quiet for a long moment, considering. Then he smiled. "Make it 10 million. Tijan's jaw tightened. "Fine, 10 million, but you sign a contract. You agree to stay out of my life. And if you ever come near Simone or Zara again, the deal's off and I'll make sure you regret it." Mincio laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fine, you've got yourself a deal, brother." Tijan nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward with a briefcase. Inside was a contract and a pen. Mincio signed it without reading it, his smile never fading. "Pleasure doing business with you," Mincio said mockingly. Tijan didn't respond. He just watched as his brother walked away, disappearing into the shadows like the snake he was. One of Tijan's guards stepped up beside him. "You think he'll actually honor the agreement?" "No," Tijan said quietly. "But now I have legal documentation that he was paid to leave us alone. If he breaks it, I have grounds to destroy him." The guard nodded, smart. Tijan stared at the empty warehouse, his mind already turning to the next problem. Because men like Mincio didn't just disappear. They waited, they planned. They came back when you least expected it. But Tijan would be ready. He had too much to lose now. When Tijan walked back into the penthouse 3 hours later, Simone nearly collapsed with relief. She crossed the room in a heartbeat and threw her arms around him, holding on tight like he might disappear if she let go. "You're okay," Simone breathed. "I'm okay," Tijan confirmed, his arms coming around her. "It's over. Mincio's leaving the country. He's not going to bother you anymore." Simone pulled back just enough to look at his face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Tijan said. "I made sure of it." Simone didn't ask what that meant. She didn't want to know the details. She just wanted this nightmare to be over. "Thank you," Simone said quietly, "for protecting us, for keeping Zara safe." "You don't have to thank me," Tijan said. "I'd do anything for you, both of you." Simone's heart clenched. She stared up at him, at this dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who'd saved her life in more ways than one. "I love you," Simone said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Tejan froze. His eyes widened just slightly, like he hadn't expected to hear those words. "You don't have to say it back," Simone added quickly. "I just needed you to know because you've given me everything, a job, a home, safety, hope, and I." Tejan cut her off by kissing her. It was deeper this time, more intense, filled with all the emotion neither of them knew how to put into words. When they finally broke apart, Tejan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," Tejan said quietly. "I've loved you since the night you fell asleep in my bed and looked at me like I was a person instead of a monster." Simone's eyes filled with tears. "You're not a monster." "Maybe not to you," Tejan said, "but to the rest of the world I am, and I need you to be okay with that. Because this life, my life, it's complicated, it's dangerous, and I can't promise it'll ever be normal." "I don't need normal," Simone said. "I just need you." Tejan smiled, soft and genuine, and kissed her again. 3 months later, Simone stood in the penthouse kitchen making breakfast while Zara sat at the counter doing homework and Tejan read through emails on his tablet. It was domestic and normal and everything Simone never thought she'd have. Zara had adjusted to their new life better than Simone could have hoped. She loved her new school, loved the penthouse, and had decided that Tejan was pretty cool for a grown-up. Tejan had adjusted too. He was still the feared, powerful man everyone whispered about. But at home with Simone and Zara he was different, softer, more human. "Mama, can Mr. Tejan come to my school play?" Zara asked, looking up from her homework. Simone glanced at Tejan, who was already smiling. "I wouldn't miss it," Tejan said. Zara beamed. "Good, because I'm playing a tree and I'm going to be the best tree ever." Tejan laughed, and Simone's heart felt so full she thought it might burst. This was her life now. This strange, beautiful, complicated life with a man who'd seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up instead of walk away. And as Simone stood there in that massive kitchen, watching the man she loved joke with her daughter like they'd been a family forever, she realized something important. Sometimes the best things in life come from the moments you least expect, from falling asleep in the wrong bed, from being seen by someone who should have been a stranger, from taking a chance on love, even when it's messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying. The lesson: life has a funny way of putting you exactly where you need to be, even when it doesn't make sense at the time. Simone fell asleep in that bed not because she was careless, but because her body had finally given out after years of surviving on fumes. And instead of punishment, she found compassion. The lesson here isn't about luck or fairy tales. It's about recognizing when someone sees you, really sees you, and having the courage to let them in. It's about understanding that strength isn't just pushing through alone. Sometimes strength is accepting help. Sometimes it's letting someone care about you even when you've spent so long believing you don't deserve it. Tejan could have had Simone fired, could have had her arrested for trespassing, could have done 1,000 cruel things that powerful men do when they're disrespected. But he didn't. Because he saw himself in her. He saw the exhaustion, the desperation, the fierce love for a child that made her keep going even when her body was screaming to stop. And he chose kindness. That choice changed everything for both of them. So remember, you never know when a single moment of vulnerability might lead to something beautiful. You never know when the worst day of your life might become the turning point that saves you. And you never know when someone dangerous might turn out to be exactly what you need. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we've got more emotional, dramatic, beautiful stories coming your way. Drop a comment and let me know what you thought. Did you see that ending coming? Would you take a chance on love like Simone did? Let's talk about it. And don't forget to like this video if you're still feeling all the emotions. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, Sometimes the best love stories start in the most unexpected places.